This episode of Super Pulp Science is brought to you by The Oncelands, sinister tales of swords and sorcery, written and illustrated by GMB Kamichuk, available at sharedworld.ca.
Attention, citizens! It's time for Super Pulp Science!
This is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. I am GMB Kamichuk, and I am here with my long-suffering co-host, Justin Curry, who is known the world over as Chasing Artwork. We also have another long-suffering, sometimes co-host of our show, the host of his own podcast occasionally, Dr. Jonathan Ball from Writing the Wrong Way, has joined us today to talk about a big writing idea. Say hello, Jonathan.
Hello.
Okay, I didn't know we were going to have a sexy episode, but it just became that. When you showed up here with all the casual attitude I've come to expect from new dad Justin.
There is currently spit up on my sweater, if you can't tell.
You had a great idea for our episode. Why don't you introduce the concept, and I'll take it from there.
Okay, so I want to this time of year. It's January for those of you listening in the future. Is always kind of the time of year where us as primarily convention artists, we kind of hide away in our warm, toasty houses, and we just make art, and things kind of slow down to a crawl. At least for me, they certainly do. And I look forward to this time because I can just make new things and get excited about the upcoming convention season and things kind of, picking up. So it's my kind of sit and create period, and I always look forward to it. And good buddy of mine and friend of the podcast, Quirkylicious, the other day on social media, just made a comment of how he never gets really art block, but he's constantly getting art flood. And just too many ideas and not enough time. And this really resonated with me, and I just liked his little branding of it, art flood, as opposed to art block. And just the idea that a lot of us, we have so many ideas, and we have the means and the skills to produce them, and then we have a delivery system to get them out into the world. And we're in this amazing privileged position where we can make these things and make them a physical reality. And then so it's just kind of this overwhelming burden of, well, which one do you pick? Which one do you work on? And as soon as you start working on one, you get hit with 2 more ideas and then 3 more ideas. And it just becomes overwhelming at a point.
So this is particularly prescient because before you came in with spit up on your sweater,
you can't tell.
You can't tell. You can smell, but you can't tell. We, and the we in this case, Lyndon and Jonathan and I were working on our project list for this coming year and making some plans as nimble as they could be for which projects we were putting in which months and when and how and why. And we have a number of projects that are placed with publishers, somewhat in a limbo, some of them, so we have to decide who to push and when to push them. And all of this stuff was going on. So when you came in talking about the art flood, I felt like we were up to our noses in that flood, because not just the ideas that we are trying to push forward and carry on from last year, but the new stuff that is exciting and interesting and shiny and challenging, and all that stuff also has to fit into last year's obligations. So let's frame this argument as we bring Jonathan into it, because I know some of his intractable nature will be of use to us here, which is, do you believe in writer's block to begin with?
No. But let me just qualify that a little bit by saying, when people talk about writer's block, or, artist block or whatever, when they talk about being blocked, like that process, like they don't know, they can't get writing done. I find that a lot of the times it's easy to dismiss it, and I find I can even be, caught dismissing it, but it's easy to dismiss it because, of course, it's untrue. It just doesn't make any sense on the face of it. What they often mean is something different from what they're saying. And so I sometimes will try to catch myself and take it a little more seriously, not like what they're saying is nonsense, because it is nonsense, but like what's underneath what they're saying is like some other thing, like they feel overwhelmed, like you're saying.
Okay, so let me frame this so you
Or
don't
they
seem like
feel
quite a
like
monster.
no.
As a heartless literalist, the notion of being writer's blocked is ridiculous.
Yeah,
But
you
if
just
you,
read something.
as a human person with feelings and emotion, recognize that what they're doing is trying to sum up the idea that there's something they want to do that they don't know how to do.
Or they're just not liking anything they're writing.
Right.
Often if you dig into it, they are writing something. It's just that they think it's trash. They're writing it, they're throwing it away, writing it, throwing it away. And I try to if that's the case, I try to explain to them that's just the normal process. That means you are doing the writing. Sometimes they don't write, they procrastinate what they're writing. And that's the problem. They're procrastinating writing, but it's not that they couldn't write. They're not really stuck. They're just procrastinating it. So sometimes they're just discounting what they're actually doing. Like they're actually doing more than they think they are. And they're kind of, not cutting themselves slack. But other times they're just procrastinating. And, maybe they don't recognize it. They've gussied it up into this fancy thing. And then now they feel like something's wrong with them just because they're doing a normal thing like procrastinating.
So to frame that, if you are writing and you're having a crisis of faith in your own writing, you might express it as, oh, I'm blocked. But the truth is, you're not blocked. You don't believe in your own work right now.
Yeah, you're
and
just too anxious, or you're just not motivated to write. There's a lot. So I feel like the solution always is you have to figure out what's the actual problem. If the actual problem is you don't like the thing you're writing, maybe you shouldn't be writing it. You're worrying about trying to write this thing, but you don't even want to write it anymore.
Right.
So sure, you're blocked.
And I find in those occasions it's really nice to be able to pivot onto something else. Like whenever I use the phrase, I'm disenchanted with this project right now. Like it's not speaking to me right now. I don't want to work on it at the moment. And so I'll switch to something else. And that usually fires up the inspiration to go back to the other project at some point or another. So
sometimes
it's better not to do that.
Yeah.
But if it's the choices between doing that and doing nothing,
That's
some
it.
people
Yes.
choose nothing, and they're making that choice whether they realize it or not.
So sometimes it's defined by other people as the muse, but I don't really like the notion of the muse. I prefer talking about the notion of the flow state. Like the flow state here loosely defined is you're working on something, you have something that you're passionate about doing, and when you're doing it, time has no meaning to you. You're not getting tired, you're not getting hungry, you're just pushing through that thing, and then you kind of wake up from doing it and you go, wow, I did that thing?
Yeah.
How long was I there doing that thing? I can't believe it. That's when we found flow state. And many researchers and many psychologists have looked and explored the notion of flow state ad nausea. So if you're enjoying this, go down a Google rabbit hole.
That's not the normal day writing. I think people expect that. They have that happen once, and they think, oh, that's going to be the day every time. And, they get disappointed and
Movies
blown.
and media also portray it that way.
Yeah.
Right? You get swept up, you get intoxicated by the muse,
right.
by the flow state. And if you're not in that, then you've just got nothing.
I think sometimes that's what people are talking about when they say they have writer's block, is that they've had that intoxicating moment and now they can't find it again.
Yeah, maybe they're still writing, but they don't feel like they're writing. Or they're just because they don't have the state going on, they don't start. But they don't recognize maybe that they have to be started already before they could get in the state. I like to always equate it with football and give it a sports metaphor. And those guys
Coming from you, this is interesting.
But if those guys who play football, right? So they're
Name
practicing,
one. I couldn't name one
practicing.
O.J. Simpson.
And then they practice for
That's the only one that I can think of.
they practice for hours.
Name
They practice for weeks. They practice for months. Yeah.
Name a football player who has not allegedly murdered a member of his family.
That wasn't so bad.
The game isn't that long. The game's like 2 minutes of play or something. I don't know enough about sports, as you can see, but that's like the stats of it is like the actual gameplay is like 18 minutes,
starts
6 minutes. But they're doing all that work to get ready for that time, because if they don't do that work, they can't do it that moment. And I always like equate writing to that. It's like you got to sit there and like do it, forever, and so that you could get into the flow state every once in a while.
So my recent family dynamic is such, and I won't name which son it is, but one of them has needed some really focused math time right now. And so we have adopted an old writing technique that I believe in. I think is a great technique, and it goes as follows. Set aside an hour of your day, and you don't have to write during that hour, but you're not allowed to do anything else. So we have an hour of our evening where we go to a room, and he doesn't have to work on his math, but he's not allowed to do anything else. And so boredom and restlessness will drive you to do the thing that you don't have the momentum to start. And then once the habit starts to form, and I've definitely seen this even in this very, brief couple of weeks of us trying this, now it becomes, it's that time. You're getting your stuff ready. You're going up. And he goes, you know what, Dad? I don't know if I'm going to do any math. I might just sit there the whole time. But he's not resisting the habit of going there. And then maybe it's a half hour, maybe it's whatever. And what I've been doing during that time is the repulsive essentials of managing all the cost per unit breakdowns of all my different projects to try and figure out which ones separated from my artist life are just fiduciarily responsible and which ones are fiduciarily irresponsible. A thing I would never take time to do. So that's our joke, is that we're both doing math we don't want to do, but now we're doing it together. So isn't that nice?
The technique that I would stack on that in terms of writing, just sit down. That's your writing time. Just sit there, even if you don't do any writing. A really good technique to throw in there is just retype someone else's writing. Like grab a book off your shelf and just start retyping it. So you're not writing, but you're mimicking the activity of writing.
Absolutely.
And your worst case scenario, you kind of learn more about writing by retyping something you like the writing. But what you'll find almost invariably is very quickly you kind of, because you're going through all the motions of writing, your brain sort of catches up and starts coming up with all the other things that are involved in creating and writing. Right. And so very quickly you'll just veer off that into your own stuff.
You could retype blood meridian and learn the majestic proper use of semicolons.
Worst case, I wouldn't use a semicolon, but worst case you learn how to write a good book by kind of osmosis. But what you often find is just getting started was the problem.
Yeah.
You lower the stakes to start.
One thing I've been finding that's really helping me, because especially now I'm coming up with all these ideas for really intricate paintings that are like minimum 40 hours of work, some of them a lot more, some of them maybe a bit less. But I kind of come up with the sketch and the concept, and then rather than, like, I don't have the time to like jump into the painting right now. I've got other things on my priority list, but I'll make a draft post of when it's done. Here's the things I want to say about this. And then I'll make a draft store item of here's the kinds of sizes I want this available. I'll find a mock-up of a nice room with plants. This is like where I'm going to mock up the canvas for this piece when it's done. So I'm doing like all the little like marketing things and little writings that go behind the piece when it's finished. And this is just kind of helping me kind of set up this foundation for when the work is done, because that's also the work that I find I kind of leave to the very end, and then I quickly get out of the way. Like the posting of it and the marketing of these big projects is usually the last.
So I'm gonna intercept Jonathan, who's leaning towards the microphone, to say this. I just want to really. We started talking about the notion of the art flood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important that we say that in your journey of self-expression, you're now at a place where you're able to choose your weapon and choose your arena. And so the flood, right, gets you excited because, oh, I know where it'll go and how it'll be there. And if I do it myself, this is how I'll do it myself. And maybe I'll pitch it to someone else, but probably not. This is what I'm going to do. And so that gives you a lot of confidence in carrying it through. That's why it can be a flood. Quirkalicious, same way. He has his market figured out. He knows who his people are and what they want and how to give it to them. If you're not there,
Let me
no
bridge that
restricted
gap.
place.
My thing is going to bridge that gap.
okay, yeah.
So, and this is a story I heard Dan Brown tell in some interview or something once, is he was in the situation of trying to write one of his early books, and he just was like feeling stuck, wasn't able to do it, and he has having a hard, one of the reasons he realized was that he was demotivated because it seemed impossible that he would be done this thing and it would come out the way he wanted and all this stuff. So what he started doing to kind of bridge this gap between like where I am now and where I want it to be in the end, because he hadn't gone through the process like maybe, Justin has, and he didn't know that like, oh, I can get to that level.
Right.
What he did was he mocked up a cover design, like front, back, cover copy, French flaps. He printed out a dust jacket and he like grabbed some book off the shelf and he like put the dust jacket for his, like, if his book was done, what it would look like in his brain. And what he would do before he started working on it, he'd like pick up this book with this dust jacket on. He didn't show anyone this because it was like, but he would like look it over.
Talisman.
He'd like hold it in his hand, and he'd like read the back, and he'd like imagine like I'm holding the thing in my hand.
So he's remembering it rather than
Right,
creating it.
and that would kind of give him it is kind of possible. It just felt real enough that he could then kind of be like, okay, let's get to the nuts and bolts of getting towards this place.
It's funny you say that.
So anything you do to trick yourself.
I find books where I have got the cover layout finished before the book is finished, I find easier to finish writing.
So, like you can envision what the blurbs are on the back before you've written it. Here's what I want people to be saying about it. Even
The other thing in consultations, when people have hired me to do a boot camp with them for their story or their thing, one of the ways I start is I say it's 3 years from now and you found your book at a used bookstore. You took it off of the shelf. What does it look like? And describe the object as you imagine it for someone else to find is a really great way of how big is it? What's it made of? What is the...
It's not just a mental trick too, because there is like a practical process-oriented reality side of it. When you do that kind of exercise, it forces you, like writing a blurb or writing the back cover copy for the book you haven't written yet, it forces you to distill what that book is about. And often at the start of the project, you don't really know what the thing is, and it's really messy, and you don't have a guiding path, and you don't even know why you're writing the thing. And what I've seen is that it really helps people to just think ahead a little bit to like, well, what is this thing in its essential nature? Because so much, I like to say a lot, you have to kind of make it more of what it is and less of what it is not. And I think so many stages along the drafting and editing process, you're kind of trying to make it more itself and take away the things that are making it not itself. And if you don't really know what it is, you're just floundering around. And sometimes I think people feel overwhelmed or writer's blocky because they kind of are unsure what they're even working on in a weird way.
No! What are you doing to it?
Just a little experiment. Such an honor for you. No Gelfling has laid eyes upon the crystal in 1,000 trine. Look deep into it.
Connected to what you want to save, like really narrowing down the idea and connecting it to the flood. It makes me think of, in my misspent youth, I live just outside of Winnipeg. Red River surged. It was the flood of the century. Our entire neighborhood was underwater. And what happened was relief workers and volunteers came and we sandbagged what you thought you could save, right? When the flood is coming, you're trying to keep some part of it dry so that you know what's really there. And so in a way, that's what you're talking about, is you build a little area where, like, despite the deluge of ideas, what is it really about? What am I trying to keep dry, keep your powder dry, as it were, right? So that you know, as the water level rises, because there's always cool ideas, new things coming, new things. What are you trying to keep safe? So what are some ways that you guys use to keep your ideas safe from the new ideas that are coming?
I like to write down. I don't always do it, but when I do it, it works really well. I like to write down, like, on a little post-it note or something, why am I writing this thing? Like, not just, what is it, but like, why am I working on the eye collector? And, it could be practical things like I want to be done a comic. I want to publish a graphic novel. That's just one of my goals. Or it could be an artistic thing like, I just, I really want to delve into this idea of looking at things from different points of view. And what would it mean what does it mean for humans to be stuck in their point of view? And what's the kind of tragedy of being stuck in your point of view? And like, so I'll sometimes be artistically speaking. Sometimes it's more emotional. Like I want to, whatever.
That not what, but why was a real key moment. I've been working on some episodes of this true crime docuseries. This is not my milieu. This is not what I really want to be doing. It's not the what, but it's the why. And I kept writing for myself, why do I want to do this? Because I have to learn better how TV works. And the only way to do it is to write for TV, right? So you have to, sometimes the why and the what are very separate.
And it really helps to motivate you, but also to put in perspective, like, what you're doing, both in the sense of like, okay, why am I doing this practically? Why am I doing this emotionally? Why am I doing this artistically? It kind of helps you get back on track in a way, because it's so easy to get caught up in all the moving parts and to just get frustrated by the things that are frustrating you.
And if the why is that it makes you feel good, that can be enough, dear listener.
Mm.
And you got to be aware.
Simple.
You have to be aware the hustle culture poison of the dollar, which is so in the way of anyone doing a creative thing right now. Is like, oh, if you're doing it, it must be to make money. No, that doesn't have to be your why. Right now, the reason I'm writing this book is it makes me feel good. And when I feel good, I'm a better husband, father, son, whatever.
Let's say you are doing it to make money.
Yeah, it can be.
Let's say that is your why. If you realize it's not going to make you money at some point, then you can just stop doing it.
Absolutely true.
Or vice versa. If it is just to make money, well, does it need to be that good, or does it just need to be done?
Yeah.
Are you stressing about a thing? This is the thing, the why thing, whether it's, an emotional, artistic reason or a practical, simple reason or whatever. One thing I notice is, one, it's easy to forget why you're doing something. And two, if you were just go back to like, well, why am I doing this in the first place? If you literally are reading off a card, like, you can remind yourself that way in a weird way, whereas it's easy for it to go out of your head.
It's like a contract with yourself.
Yeah, but also it sets the terms. It's a good. I like the metaphor of the contract because it sets the terms of the agreement with yourself. It's like, well, I'm doing this for this reason, therefore I don't need to worry about these other things.
Right. Yeah.
Like if I'm just doing it because I want to, be a better person, and I know that writing this is going to help me process my pain or whatever, then it doesn't need to be good at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what are some things that you use, Justin, to stop the idea from being swept away by the flood?
So I talked about it on the last podcast of the art book and how it's been this amazing vehicle for a roadmap for what I want to work on next. And especially in the sleepy months of, January, February, every time I have an idea and I'm fired up by inspiration, I'll try to take that 20 minutes to an hour to sketch out the idea, like just roughly thumbnail, collect. I'll use an example. There's this one piece where I want to do similar to, if you're familiar with like the Lo-Fi Girl or those chill step channels where it's just kind of a cozy scene. I wanted to do like a cockpit and like a person sleeping in the cockpit and is surrounded by, I think, like 90s anime, like retro computery tech, like just.
And this is like an airplane cockpit or a mech?
See, and leaving it a little ambitious. So it's kind of floating in like a lot of white space around it, and it's just kind of an isolated cockpit that clearly this person spends a lot of time in there. There's plants, there's tea, there's books, there's like all these monitors everywhere with like gibberish, whatever. And so I have this rough sketch of exactly what I just explained, and then like a folder just full of like 90s anime screenshots of computer tech and mech tech and like cockpits and stuff like that. And I don't have time to work on this right now, but that's all collected. And then I plopped it into my art book and wrote about it like it's a finished project. have a plan for like how when this is done, I want to put it on Instagram this way and make a reel like this. Like just kind of plan all that out and then move on to the thing I need to work on now. So I've done that probably like in the last month. I've come up with at least 8 or 9 new pieces, and I've done this process. I haven't been able to really work on any of them yet, but they're all planned out and they're all kind of road mapped. And this makes me happy because the piece won't, if you don't write it down, if you don't get it down, that it's gonna disappear. Even the best ideas, you always think you're gonna remember, you never do.
100%. I agree with that. Let me ask you a question about your capacity for compartmentalization. No pun intended related to your cockpit, but I guess sort of. What you're describing is ability to say, okay, when I get into production, these are all the things I'll need to consider, so I'm going to write them down now because those are top of mind now. Have you always been good at that? Or is that a skill that has evolved over the last while?
I think that's evolved. It's definitely something I wasn't doing a whole lot of before, but it seems like the last like year or two, I think maybe like building a couple Kickstarters really helped us out by, before the project's done, building a campaign about the project. Just like you were saying, J-Ball, really helps you find the mission statement of that project, of that idea, and have that like laid out as you're still working on the project. Whereas before I'd kind of work in silence and in isolation, and when it was done, plop.
Yeah.
You know?
I like to think about it as a map. It's like you're kind of making a map so that later on when you get lost, you can just look at the map.
Yeah.
And it sounds so simple and stupid. And it's weird to like pick a cue card and write down, I'm writing the eye collector because I want to do this. But you forget that stuff.
I don't think that's weird at all because I do that. I carry a book around. I keep my ideas in there. And when I am worried, I go back and look at notes I've written to myself about what I really mean. So what I do is, if I have this 5 or 6 pages of the notebook, that I collect the details of a story. So if I'm working on a storyline, what I'll do is I'll take a few pages of my book and I'll write down all the tangential details, big or small, that could be in something that felt like that. These could be phrases characters might say, descriptions of objects, descriptions of places, little doodles of like screwdrivers to like flowers, whatever fits, depends on the genre. And then later I will look at that list and I will try to make what is essentially the mission statement of how all those details are supposed to coalesce to make the reader or the experiencer feel about that thing.
I also love that kind of stuff for back matter as well, like saving it up to actually put in the back of the book as this is where that idea comes from.
Yeah, where do ideas come from?
Yeah.
Well, what I find it's useful in distilling is what the parameters of the genre, because I work, the joke is from the heartwarming to the blood curdling, but I work in a lot of different stuff, and I often don't know what genre it is until it's almost finished. And that can be a problem if you're trying to pitch early. And so what I've started to do is figure out what all the details I want and then try to create a statement, a mission statement about how I want the reader to feel reading it. And that usually helps me really distill the genre. Like, oh, this is horror. Oh, this is science fiction. Oh, this is action. Oh, this is fantasy. All of those things come out by looking at those details. And that's been a good parameter for me.
The other use of fleshing something out in a little couple directions or in a few ways before you really sit down and write it is that sometimes that's enough. You just flesh it out enough and you're like, you know what? It's not really an idea I want to commit to. I'll move on to something else.
But it's good that you do that because later on there's going to be some other project in that same arena and you're going to find a way to combine those. That definitely happened with I had a couple ideas and I wasn't really feeling this one, but I kind of liked it. I didn't want to get rid of it. And then something else popped into my head that made more sense to combine those two things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if you never come back to it, though, like if you spend a couple hours with it and you never come back to it, it's better than I wrote the whole thing and I don't even like it.
Right.
Yeah.
Or I got like 200 pages into it and I realized I don't even want to write this book.
Now, someone told me once, I'm trying to remember who it was. I remember where I heard it. I was somewhere, I think, at that must have been in Portland. There's a horror convention in Portland. This is a number of years back. But I heard it on a panel. So if you were at that panel, tell me who said it. The notion was this: something that can drive you crazy, but that can be a fun exercise to help decide if the book you're thinking of is right, is you think of the genre that you're working in. what area of the book story it would be shelved with. And then because your name is going to be shelved alphabetically, what the comparable titles to the right and left of you would be as a result. And that is what, because people looking for the one will find the other. Who will your shelf mate be? And that can help you decide, oh, yes, I'm in the right place. If you then look for that author's work and look at who is publishing their work, what kind of work they're doing, it can give you a real sense of scale and scope of the world outside yourself that you're not thinking of. Who you're going to share that shelf space with can really be a good way to help figure out who to pitch and when and why.
I think anything that makes it seem more real is useful at that stage where it's just feeling either unachievable because, you don't know what to do, or you just have too many things to do, or again, like if your problem is that you have too many things to do and there's too many ideas, like if you're in that opposite problem, then some people are in that situation. The thing I think is really useful is just to kind of realize if you're doing one thing, you can't do the other thing.
Yeah, like,
And so
whatever you decide,
yeah,
puts yourself into that.
you got to make a choice. And the best way to make an educated choice is to sort of think ahead to like, well, if all these things were done, which one would I show my, agent if they said they'd only look at one or something? Like if you can just think ahead a little bit, it can help you make those decisions about what to focus on if you're having a hard time with that. Mm-hmm. Keep the end in mind, as somebody said. I forget who.
They were probably
some self-help or something.
Yeah, I was going to say. I was going to make a joke about someone in a hood with an axe, but
right.
Maybe as society teeters on the brink of men in hoods with axes,
if you're going to murder people in a psychotic fashion, you can't kill them all. You gotta pick one.
Okay, that is a separate podcast for the heartless monster that is one. Yeah.
Do you sleep? Of course, sire. Do you dream? Dream? Yes. No, Emperor. Neither did I, until I began my experiments upon the darkening. Now my slumber is riddled with nightmares.
One of the things that comes into play when people are wrestling with writer's block is, who do they have to convince that the idea is worth continuing on? When you start a new project, gentlemen, who are the people that you try to convince that aren't yourselves that the project is worth working on? And has that changed a lot over the years?
For me, there's nobody.
You never ask?
I have no interest in what other people think.
The danger there too is when you tell somebody about this great idea that you haven't done anything on, and they like say, "Oh my God, that's amazing! That's a great idea." You get that dopamine rush of it is great, and then you don't have as much motivation to work on it.
So you guys have no gatekeepers in your lives at all?
No. I would say in this, it's good and bad.
I was going to say, rare. So rare. Most people have lots of gatekeepers, and I think that those gatekeepers create fear and shame. They ask them about what it's worth, how much time they're going to be spending on it. Why are you doing this? Is it going to make us money? Am I going to spend more time or less time with you? Are you going to have to travel as a result? Like, they immediately go into the success trap.
I was saying the other day, my wife doesn't even know like if I've got a book out. I've got a new book. She's like, I thought you published that book. I'm like, no, I'm doing that next year. She has no idea, none. Which, I don't care. It's fine. If she had an idea, it would be great, but she doesn't. But it doesn't matter to me in like practical terms. But also I feel like my thing is like, it doesn't even really matter to me. I'm not even trying to convince myself. I just feel like I have a job and I'm doing the job.
Jonathan, we've uncovered something important, because your wife is not that interested in genre work at all. Mine is also not interested in that work really at all.
Yeah, it's one of the things we share.
Yours is not really interested in that kind of work at all.
As kind of a litmus test, I'll run an idea by Darcy, and if she thinks that's not going to work, that's how I know I should keep going with it.
Because it's different.
Okay, just zero interest in that kind of my arena.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. This cannot be insignificant data that the three of us now right, are in the room together. Just hold on. Let me get this thought out because it's nascent. It's too fragile. The soap bubble could pop at any moment. Is it possible that the disinterest of the people we've chosen to spend the larger part of our life with in whether or not our ideas succeed or fail is part of why we know they're supporting us and not the idea?
Yes.
And so that's why the idea is allowed to fail.
I would even say that they're supporting me. I would just say it's like none of the, like her attitude is like, well, it's none of my business. It's like
The support means more because they couldn't care less about the
couldn't care less.
Yeah, it's you.
Yes.
It's the essential Jonathan-ness that they want.
I wouldn't
not
even say that.
success.
I just say, look, it's beside the point. It's like I could be working, it doesn't matter because it's not their interest or concern. So, but I also feel like
psychologists on the show to talk to the three of us about this. I feel like
well, I think there's a couple maybe psychological reasons for it, but I think like on my process, my thing on a certain level is if I've got a project that I'm committed to, once I've decided I'm committing to this project, the first thing I have to do mentally myself is I have to sort of adjust to now I'm the servant of that project. And I am not, the master of that project. I'm, the servant of that project. And I need to just, if I catch myself being in the position where I expect something from the project, I have to get out of that mindset real fast. So if I start thinking, oh, maybe this will get me an agent, or maybe this will get me a big publishing deal, or maybe, people will like this, I'm like, I got to kick myself out of that because it's not my job.
It's like indulging when you do that, right? Like
I think so.
Yeah, it's not healthy to do that too much. Like it's fun to do it a little bit, but it's
Now the bad side of it is I'm not great at celebrating my wins, as we were talking about in the other podcast.
Yeah, you just talked about how you were trying to do that.
Yeah, and so I'm not great at that, and which is not a great thing. I'm not great at supporting the books when they're out either, in a way, because I'm kind of like, I moved on to the next project. So I'm trying to get better about the practical realities of like, okay, I should be more with that thing.
That's
in
where
this other stage.
that pre-marketing thing is really helping as well, because I agree, like once a project is done, I immediately forget about it, move on to the next. So like building into
just following the map you already made.
Yeah.
Well, and doing it earlier in the process, right? Like before the piece is done, I already have kind of a bit of an article written that's going in the art book, that's going on like to post online. And then I've also pre-scheduled another post 6 months from now where I talk about it again.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get more systematic about those things so that, again, I don't want to spend all my time there because that's not my job on a certain level. Spiritually speaking, like I feel again like my job is to do this work,
Be the servant.
I'm going to do the work, and then it's kind of irrelevant after that point. So I think folded into that is it's not my job to get like praise from my partner about what a great writer I am.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
And it's not so like maybe I would go overboard and like I won't even talk about the writing I'm doing.
Yeah. In fact, Tara and I have been together. We'll be going on 26 years this year. If I had required over that time her to be invested in the individual projects of writing, I don't know if any of them would have succeeded, because when the going got tough, she would side with me not the project. You know what I'm saying? Like she would side with whatever would make you happy, not whether so the fact that the projects are separate from our relationship means that when she's siding with me, I have that energy now to bring outward to those projects. Like you go home for safety, comfort, and love, and then you go out into the world to get kicked around.
Separation as well. I often wonder, like all of us are with people that are not in our industry, but we have friends that are dating somebody who's in the same industry as them.
Done it. It's tough because then you're up for the same. I was dating a girl who was a writer.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of friendly with her, and she was really she's great
Until after this podcast.
and she's a great writer. But the problem you got into real quickly, which it wasn't a big deal, but I could see how it could have become a big deal, is like all of a sudden we're both applying for the same grant.
Right.
All of a sudden we're up for the same award.
That
All of a sudden,
competition can turn a little hairy.
so when it's like you're being married to your coworker and you're just around each other too much.
Don't fight. Give the crystal your fear, your love, your secrets.
I don't know if it would matter that the person is in the same industry as long as the work is not a direct indirect correlation. You know
But
what I mean?
if you're
'Cause
both-
we're all here in this room in the same industry, and I never feel like, oh, I have to worry about the competition that Justin is creating, right?
Right, but it's not like you have the same style, right?
Yeah,
That's
we're
what I'm
after.
saying.
Yeah.
So-
But if you were with somebody who's in your same, like, has a similar style,
Yeah.
going for the same people, like
Right?
That could be true.
Only one of you is going to get this deal,
Yeah.
So I feel like I just feel like it's too messy. I'm not saying it can't be done or people don't do it successfully, but I've noticed that it gets messy. And I feel like, there's also the messiness of wanting the validation from anybody, whether it's your partner or a publisher. Again, like I'm not saying it's unnatural to want the validation, but you got to guard against wanting the validation. And it's just too messy to me
also
to
have to
have a partner who's like reading your work. It's like, I don't know, man.
You also have to guard against receiving validation from an invalid source, right? Somebody who doesn't make the work who tells you it's so good, dear.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not saying you can't
You're going to
enjoy
get
it.
you might get all puffed up, but then it actually doesn't help it advance or get better. You want to receive those external validations from people who are not involved with you romantically.
On the other hand, I can see where it's helpful to have validation, especially early on.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's not that it's something you should guard against at all cost, but I feel like it's a slippery slope, and I like to call it getting caught up in other things. It's just too easy to get caught up in other things when you're inviting people in to give you invalidation. And so I guess, not that it's right, but I feel like I've almost gone the other path a lot, where it's like I just will try to like remove myself from the possibility of people to give me validation.
Mm-hmm.
So we've stumbled across something I didn't know we'd stumble across, which is how all our spouses are alike. Maybe we should bring them on to talk about
Back
it.
to your point, though, the gatekeeper, like
No, they were celebrating you. We did have an episode where your significant other and Lyndon's significant other came on, and then I thought I was going to get the real tea spills, and instead it was just like, oh, they're so great. I don't know what they do, but they're so great.
that's why they think you're great, is because you don't go on about what you do all the time. Can you imagine dating those guys? I actually hear about it from friends of yours, right? Like me, I do at least. Women who date guys who are like writers or whatever, or artists, and like he just won't stop talking about himself, and it's always going on about this art. And I'm like, well, doesn't. I can see why that would be annoying.
Since you know about it intimately.
You know what I mean? Like that kind of person tends, not always, but they can be very. The kind of person who expects like everyone to give them validation for the things they do is very aggravating.
Okay, so there are a couple of floods you have to guard against here then, it sounds like. There's a flood of ideas that can come when you are a creative person, and then you just don't have enough time, space, resources to accomplish them. And so you have to build yourself a little barrier, a little wall, a little stack of sandbags to save the idea and keep it dry while the flood
Important to
goes.
save it, to preserve it somewhere.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the other things that can come are floods of doubt, floods of praise, floods of interest. I've seen also a real problem where
They're the same thing, which people don't realize.
Yeah.
Those three things are the same thing. It doesn't feel like it, right? Because like people being really excited, I love your work. It's the same as people saying, I hate your work. I hate you.
we can get swept away by it.
But it's even the same thing. It's feedback on the work.
Yeah.
It doesn't interest me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Feedback on the work, though, becomes a flood that you have to guard against then as well. So bringing us all the way back around to Little Quirkalicious and his idea of the art block versus art flood. When he made that post, did he make any subsequent observations about what he's going to do?
No, it was just a quick little thing. I'm trying to stay off Instagram more these days. So I'm not sure if there was any follow up or anything else. But just knowing him as a friend and chatting with him, we both kind of get into those just flurries of like, oh God, I want to work on this, 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 and this, and these are all achievable. And I just have to pick one, or I can't do any of them until I'm done what I'm currently doing. And it's frustrating.
How do you feel? Actually, dear listener, I know both of their answers, but I'm going to ask him for your benefit. Gentlemen, how do you feel about starting a new project before the old project is finished?
I do it, and if I recognize when I do it, it's a bad idea.
Yeah. Finished, not perfect. Yeah.
Finished.
The work means nothing if it's not finished.
Right.
But yeah, 100%. I always say, like, if something's 90% done,
We just talked about how.
I always say if something's 90% done, it's 0% done. Right. But the other side of it, though, which I'll
But who are you doing it
acknowledge-
for?
Well, the thing I'll acknowledge, though, in that mix, and why I break the rule, is because I was saying this to somebody a little while ago, but like one of the problems you get into in this line of work, or whatever you want to call it, is it's very project based. You know, you're in a project based sort of thing, and the problem with projects is when they involve other people, or when you start to bring in publishers or whatever, they'll be like, it's in film we say it's like hurry up and wait. You know, it's like they'll move really fast and then they'll stop, and then they'll move really fast, and you can't always predict the schedule. And it's like, if you get money, now we're moving, you know. And so it's like there's a level where, you know,
I have two projects right now that flipped completely in their order of urgency in the last week as a result of one of the stakeholders not getting back to me when they said they would. And so now, until I get that yes, there's no point in doing any more work on it. And another one where a stakeholder got in touch with me out of the blue and said, hey, if we did this in the next week, then we could have this, this, and this. And so suddenly the projects I thought I was working on completely
Surprise crunch.
Yeah, surprise crunch. I've enjoyed it.
They love it as surprise crunch.
but in that scenario, are you going to say, well, I got to finish this thing first? You know, like sometimes, yes, you got to do that.
Sometimes it's nice to be able to say that, like, hey.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's what you do.
Slow down,
Sure.
Turbo.
But other times it's like, okay, I should reasonably switch to this other thing and then come back to it, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like there's an entire episode baked into how you said, slow down, Turbo.
I had somebody who got like the inkling that like maybe we could work together, and then made a whole lot of assumptions that I had to put a stop to real quick.
I was talking to a friend of mine. I was having lunch with a friend who's like a film director a little while ago. And what was, I was saying, and then they just did like a higher profile, higher budget film. And so I was saying to them, I go, are you getting like incredible amount of people like sending you scripts and stuff now? He's like, oh my God. Because I had a friend of mine, I said to him, I go, you wouldn't believe the number of people who approach me saying they need me to get a script to you. I go, and you'll notice I say that you've never seen a script from me. I go, not even my own scripts. He's like, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm like, because what are you going to do with it? He's like, unless they got $20 million attached to it, what am I going to do with it?
Yeah, friend of
People
friend
don't get it,
problem.
though.
Slow down, Turbo. Yeah, okay. Well, now that we are approaching a new topic, I am going to say that our feet are wet enough in this discussion of the flood. Dear listener, wherever you are in your artistic journey, whether you have too many ideas or not enough, I think it's prudent for one sandbag at a time for you build a little wall around your idea. One of the things that you can do is ask yourself not what you're working on, but why you're working on it. This has been Super Pulp Science, where we encourage you to join the fight and make comics.